Hi, everyone, and thanks again so much for joining. So before we jump into the session, we want to start with the land acknowledgement. We know that many of you are joining the session from different parts of the country, and we invite all of you who are joining us from other places to think about the history of the land on which you live and work. Ontario is covered by 46 treaties and other agreements and is home to many Indigenous nations from across Turtle Island, including the Inuit and the Métis. We are mindful of broken covenants and that we all must continually strive to make this right with the land and with each other. I, myself, along with other lead partners on this project, are based in Toronto, which sits on the traditional territories of the Wendat, the Haudenosaunee, the Anishinaabe, including the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation. Regardless of where you are located, many of us have come here as settlers, as immigrants, or as newcomers in this generation or in generations past. Some of us came to this land voluntarily, and others came here forcibly, particularly as a result of the transatlantic slave trade. Therefore, we honor and pay tribute also to those of African origin and descent. Land acknowledgements and the work of truth and reconciliation invite us to reflect on our own personal stories and how we all ended up as settlers and immigrants on colonized land, and what our responsibilities are to educate ourselves about the true history of our country and what we can learn and do differently moving forward. Many newcomers came to Canada with their own histories of displacement, and many are dealing with intergenerational trauma. Many of us, as we've learned through this project especially, have lived experience of discrimination and exclusion. This experience gives us this really small window from which we can build greater awareness and understanding of the current realities faced by Indigenous communities and the many generations of trauma that they have been through. Land acknowledgements also give us an opportunity to talk about the amazing wisdom, strength, and resilience that is found in Indigenous communities. This is what enabled them to survive these experiences and be even open to truth and reconciliation after everything that's happened. One of the many pieces of wisdom that guides me is the dish with one spoon wampum agreement. It's a very old agreement between the Haudenosaunee and the Anishinaabe, and in that agreement, all of us on this land are invited into the treaty. We are all treaty people. The agreement is represented through one shared dish and one shared spoon, and there's no knife. It guides us to take only what we need, to share through redistribution of wealth and resources, and to live in peace and harmony. It also guides us to acknowledge the interconnection that we have with each other and to take on a shared responsibility to care for the dish for 7 generations to come. The Journeys to Active Citizenship Project, which is what brings us all here together today, aims to move forward in this spirit, to acknowledge the interconnection between Indigenous peoples, immigrants, and refugees, as well as with all Canadians, and the critical and valuable role that newcomers play in taking on shared responsibility for this dish. So speaking of the Journeys to Active Citizenship Project, you're going to hear all about it in just a minute. I just want to note that it's a collaborative effort between 3 agencies that work very closely together: North York Community House, which is where I am based, OCASI, the Ontario Council of Agencies Serving Immigrants, and the Democratic Engagement Exchange at Ryerson University, and all of you, the Immigrant and Refugee-Serving Sector. We have a really exciting afternoon planned. We're going to start with giving you a bit of background about the project if you're unfamiliar with it, from my colleague Paul at OCASI, followed by a keynote from Elamin Abdul-Mahmoud, who's going to tell us about his own journey to active citizenship. And then we'll move into 4 lightning talks from 4 community leaders across our region who will share with us examples of active citizenship and their journeys. We'll take a little break and then we'll reconvene after that for a collective learning, sense-making, and reflection session where you will have an opportunity to meet each other as well. So I will now pass it over to Paul Bishop at OCASI, who will share a little bit more detail about the Journeys to Active Citizenship Project.
Okay, thank you, everyone. Thank you. So my name is Paul Bishop, and I am the Journeys to Active Citizenship Coordinator at OCASI, the Ontario Council of Agencies Serving Immigrants. I joined OCASI and this project last summer, and it's been a really thrilling opportunity to be part of an initiative like this. This is a first of its kind project, and what I've had the chance to do is work with a wonderful team, as well as, of course, staff of the Immigrant and Refugee-Serving Sector, to co-design a program that sector staff can use to foster active citizenship among the people they serve. With this project, which is funded by Immigration, Refugees and Citizenship Canada, we are working to help create opportunities for immigrants and refugees to leverage their skills and knowledge in order to continue on in their journey to active citizenship. As we approach the end of year 2 of the project, it's a chance for us to reflect on the progress that we've made. Throughout this year, despite some of the difficulties posed by the pandemic, we've spoken with dozens of immigrants, refugees, and sector staff, and we've learned about some of their unique challenges, but of course also about their hope, their resilience, and their creativity. We've heard firsthand about the importance of a sense of belonging and the building of a strong community, and how necessary that is before active citizenship is possible. And building a community is really why we're all here today. Developing a community of practice is a cornerstone of this project. And we hope that through some of the sharing that happens today, we'll move a step closer to cementing that community. Now, as Sahar mentioned, this work has been the product of a collaboration between my organization, OCASI, as well as North York Community House and the Democratic Engagement Exchange at Ryerson University. I'd now like to hand it off to some of the leaders of the partner organizations to reflect on the importance of the work that we've done. And I'll begin by handing it off to Shelley Zuckerman, the Executive Director of North York Community House.
Thank you very much. Well, I'm really happy to be here today to be attending the roundtable with all of you. And on behalf of North York Community House, I'd like to welcome you to the roundtable. And as been mentioned before, North York Community House is the lead partner in the Journeys to Active Citizenship Project with OCASI and the Democratic Engagement Exchange. Just want to say a couple words about North York Community House and the Active Citizenship Program. For the past 31 years, North York Community House has been committed to supporting newcomers to Canada to settle, thrive, and belong. And we're also committed to working with groups, neighborhoods, and communities to become more civically engaged and to work with them to address issues of concern. So the Journeys to Active Citizenship Project is really a perfect combination of our two priorities. And we're really honored to be the lead partner in this project. Very excited about the project. We've had 2 great years, even with the pandemic and all the changes that have happened as a result. But we really at Niche, or North York Community House, believe strongly that part of the settlement journey for all newcomers is learning about civic engagement. But we also believe that it doesn't end there. We also believe that our role as settlement organizations are to support newcomers' active participation in addressing issues of concern and in building stronger and more inclusive communities. So that's why we're here today and involved in this project. So I won't go on anymore, but just want to wish you all a great event and look forward to this great afternoon. Thank you.
And now we'll have Debbie Douglas, Executive Director of OCASI, share a few words.
Thank you all very much. I was wondering why the silence and thinking maybe I should just follow my friends. Shelley, congratulations on leading this project. It's great to be a partner as the provincial umbrella organization. I believe that most of you on the call know who we are, OCASI. We're the provincial body for agencies like North York Community House who provide services and planning and support to immigrant and refugee and migrant communities across the province. I like to say everywhere from Kenora to Windsor and all points in between. As you heard, my name is Debbie Douglas, and I'm the Executive Director of the Council. At OCASI, we envision a Canada where the values of equity and social justice stand tall. Everything that we do is about promoting the rights of immigrants and refugees and migrants and other groups within Canada, especially groups who are marginalized because of issues of race or gender or sexuality, disability. Our role is to ensure that we create space politically and socially so that all can participate actively. And so active citizenship and this project made sense for us to partner on. For us, active citizenship is what we need to get us to a place of equity, to a country of equity and inclusion. Active citizenship is a form of power. In societies where dominant groups have long held too much sway, an engaged citizenry holds power to account. And we're in the middle of this now in Canada, as you can see, beginning with the occupation in Ottawa, the enactment of the Emergencies Act, and now a conversation we need to have as Canadians, including those of us who are newcomers, in terms of what kind of democracy we want and how do we hold those who we elect to make these decisions, how do we hold them to account to ensure that the powers that they have are not being misused. For too long, active citizenship has been so narrowly defined as being electoral participation. And so often newcomers would find, because they were not Canadian citizens and couldn't vote, that there wasn't a sense that they were active. So we were overlooking people's activities in their communities. We tend to overlook people's leadership in community organizations that evolved out of new and emerging communities, new immigrant communities. All of that are active, is forms of active citizenship. And active social justice. By participating in Journeys to Active Citizenship, OCASI, we hope to rewrite this very narrow definition. We want a Canada where active citizenship can be practiced by all, whether it is the refugees demanding better access to affordable housing, migrants fighting for status regularization, or immigrants petitioning to have their credentials recognized. Active citizenship is a form of engagement that all can participate in, regardless of where they come from. And I would add, regardless of their immigration status. Through this project, we are confident, and you heard Shelley talk about it, we are confident that the immigrant and refugee-serving sector will have the tools it needs to build active citizenship amongst the people with whom we work and who we serve. Thanks a lot, and I look forward to this afternoon and the exciting lineup that we have.
Thank you so much, Debbie. And it's been incredible to work with OCASI as a partner on this project. There's so many shared values and goals and perspectives. Next, I'll pass it over to John Beebe from the Democratic Engagement Exchange at Ryerson University.
Thank you, Sahar, and thank you, Debbie and Shelley. I just echo everything you have said here and shared here with this project. This project began 7 years ago when we had an opportunity to partner with North York Community House and work with them to develop tools and resources for members of their community. And the way we did that and the way this project has moved forward formally in the last 2 years is in partnership with the community. Because at the heart of what we're doing here is we are building tools with the community and with the refugees and immigrants to support them on their journey. And we know that when people have the tools and resources they need to shape their future, the future is better for all of us. And I think that's at the heart of the work we're doing here. And that's at the heart of the work we're doing today, is an opportunity to hear from people who are doing the incredible work of engaging their communities, working with their communities to provide them the tools and resources they need to shape their future. And as Debbie said, too often those tools and resources and capacity to do that have been denied. And so we're really looking forward to the conversation today and the conversations as we move forward to strengthen our communities so that everyone has a chance to shape the future that they want through our democratic institutions. Whether you are able to vote or not, there's an opportunity for you to play a role in shaping your future and shaping your community. And we need to make sure that everyone has that opportunity for us to thrive as a democracy. At the Exchange, our core mission is to help build a vibrant and inclusive democracy. And this project is a key part of that project. So thank you very much for being here. And I look forward to hearing from our incredible partners and everyone who is here today. Take care.
Thank you so much, Sean. And likewise, it's been great to be a partner with the Democratic Engagement Exchange on this project as well. All right, so up next is our keynote. Before I jump into the keynote, I just wanted to say, feel free to use the chat to connect with each other. We're not all in the physical space together today, but we are in a space together, a virtual space. So feel free to use the chat. I see some people have been sharing quotes that they appreciate, and use that chat to connect with each other as a community. So when we were thinking of keynotes for this event, Al-Amin Abdul-Mahmoud was the perfect fit. If you don't know him already, Al-Amin is a culture writer for BuzzFeed News and host of CBC's pop culture show called Pop Chat. He's also a founding co-host of the CBC Politics podcast Party Lines, which is a really good podcast, and is also a contributor to the CBC The National's At Issue panel. His work has appeared in Rolling Stone, The Globe and Mail, and many other publications. And he's also a very, very active citizen. I won't spoil too much. I'll let him tell you for himself. So let's listen to him ourselves about his journey to active citizenship.
Hello and good morning. My name is Al-Amin Abdul-Mahmoud. I am so grateful to be with you today. A couple of quick housekeeping things. One, we are doing this from home, and there is a dog out there, and he's going to bark at some point, and there's nothing that you or I can do about it. So if that comes into the recording, that's going to be life. The other thing is, I would like to stop talking with my hands so much, but I can't promise anything. I will do my best, though. Anyway, who is this hand-talkative man speaking to you? My name is Al-Amin Abdul-Mahmoud, as I said. I'm a journalist. I'm really grateful to be a journalist. I work at a few different places, so I write. I'm a culture writer for BuzzFeed News, and then I also host a podcast for the CBC. It's called Pop Chat, and I also occasionally appear on some political panels on the CBC. I'm speaking to you from Toronto, but Toronto is not home for me. I was born in Sudan, and I moved to Canada when I was 12. But I didn't move to Toronto. I moved to a town called Kingston, Ontario, which is a couple of hours east of the city. And I lived there for 10 years, and now I've been in Toronto for 10 years. And so there's a kind of like a neat division of my life where each third of it is spent in a different city. And as a result, home is a bit ubiquitous. It's a bit like it's all of them, but also none of them at the same time. I think that actually it is comforting to me. I like that perspective. I like the perspective that gives me about life and home. I've been a journalist for the last 10 years or so, and I'll tell you a little secret, but you have to promise to keep it a secret. I don't want anyone else out there knowing, okay? The secret is that this was not plan A, nor was it plan B. Plan A was law school. I grew up in a family that revered law, and so I was like, one day I shall be a law graduate, a lawyer, and then law schools were very gently like, thank you, but no thank you, sir. We do not have the grades to get into this. And then I thought, okay, then public policy is the next answer. And then public policy schools also were very politely like, no, sir, thank you. And then I sort of fell into a journalism career, and I say fell into it. I've been doing this for 10 years. It's not like I have wanted to escape at any point. But when I think about the thing that connects those three elements, law, public policy, journalism, there's something that connects all of them. And that's the desire, I think, the strong desire to be a part of the public conversation about the decisions that shape all of us. If I had to guess, I would say like that comes from a history. I think there's a history of feeling the consequences, me and my family, feeling the consequences of decisions made for us. So my family left Sudan because my dad was the publisher of a magazine that disagreed with the sort of ruling political leader at the time, Omar al-Bashir, who was a dictator. And so they shut down my dad's publishing company. And my dad sort of said, I don't want to raise a kid in this environment. I think that makes a lot of sense to me. But also the fact that we ended up in Canada is a consequence of a bunch of public policy decisions as well. We came here during a particularly expansive boom of immigration under the Jean Chrétien government. So because my dad moved here a few years before we did, and then my mom and I joined him a few years later. And even us joining him was a process that I think involved quite a bit of lobbying the government and lobbying institutions. My dad would, I think regularly, probably once a week, called the office of his MP at the time, Peter Milliken, the great Kingston MP. So in order for me to even be here in this country, it involved a lot of the pushing and pulling against a lot of public policy machinery and decisions made by institutions that were not in our control. And I think that naturally, drives you to a place of curiosity about those institutions and a place of curiosity about those relationships. I think even my dad chose Kingston, honestly, because of the consequences of some urban planning policies that made him feel like maybe Toronto is not the place for him to settle down. So every aspect of my life has been shaped by these things. And I think I developed maybe an early sensitivity that drove me to want to be a part of these conversations. But the thing is, I'm not sure that I'm unique in this path. I think this is actually quite a common thing that happens to a lot of people. Because when you think about it, the place where a lot of people begin to engage with citizenship and the place where people begin to engage with these sort of levers of decision making, it tends to be a place of need, right? It tends to be a place of I need a problem solved. I don't have access. I don't have resources. I don't have information. And so you go and you begin from this place of dearth. You begin from a place of lacking. And that's sort of what guides you to that step. And I was thinking about this because I'm not sure that creates the most long-lasting relationships, when it comes to becoming a citizen. Also, only thinking about these levers and these institutions and the idea of even being a citizen in a time of need maybe makes it feel like a bit of a chore. And the reason I wanted to begin here is because there's a story I want to tell you. It's a story of one of the stories I sort of covered really early on in my career. Is a story that taught me to think a little bit differently about citizenship and about the way we care for one another. It really was in sharp contrast to this beginning from a place of need, because I think a lot of people come to the idea of citizenship from a place of need, and I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. It's how you build on it. So let me tell you the story of one of the earliest stories I ever covered as a journalist. This would have been probably about 12 years ago or so. I was covering the story of the prison farms. If you're not familiar, Kingston, my hometown, has a lot of prisons. It's sort of one of the things that Kingston is known for. It used to have 9 prisons. Now there are 7. And one of those prisons, Collins Bay Institution, had a prison farm. And the folks in that prison could tend to farm animals. They could grow things. It really sort of gave a lot of the folks in Collins Bay Institution a sense of pride in terms of taking care of the prison farm and growing things there, taking care of the animals there. And about 12 years ago, the government wanted to shut down the prison farm program. And this elicited a protest from sort of folks who do prison advocacy in Kingston. It's not a lot of them. It was not a big protest by any stretch. I remember I got up, I think at like 5 in the morning to go down there just to see what the scene was. And it was like basically maybe like 24 people, you know, who were there to prevent the truck that is going to take the animals to leave from the prison. That was the plan. Sort of a physical blockade, putting their bodies in front of this truck in order to prevent it from leaving. As I got there really early, I sort of noticed in the corner that there were a couple people that I recognized from my local mosque. I recognized them. I knew who they were. I knew that they were relatively newcomers. They'd been in Canada for, at that point, maybe a year and a half or so. And I went over to talk to them because to me, I didn't think that this was a place where I would see them. Maybe that was naive of me, but I just did not, you know, it was not my belief that I'd be able to see them there. And so I went over to talk to them and I said, hey, what brings you to this protest? And the answer that they gave me was, keep in mind, like they'd been in Canada for maybe 18 months at that point, that they knew some of the prisoners at that institution who were regular members of our mosque. They would come to Friday prayers every week. And through talking with them, they learned that these prison farms are being shut down, and that this was upsetting to them. This was upsetting to them, and they wanted to show up, be very far away from the action, particularly when police began to sort of remove blockaders and arrest them. They did not want to be a part of that. They just wanted to sort of, you know, be present, physically present, in body, in order to show that they were not in support of the removal of the prison farm. And I was really moved by this. I was really moved by just their willingness to show up and say, I'm here. There's not a lot I can do, but I'm here. Because to me, what it said was, I'm here because I would like to make the prison farm problem my problem. And I think once that kind of set in for me, that's how I began thinking about what I do as a journalist. I think journalism is making other people's problem your problem. And then it kind of dawned on me that active citizenship also is making other people's problem your problem. You know, when I think about the countless journalists that I saw at the G20 in 2010, that was a really fraught time. It was a time of unfathomable police response to the protesters of the G20 that year. And I know that for a lot of folks, they'd never seen a police force that they pay for behave in this way. And journalists were there to say, that's our problem too. We're going to make this our problem. But then once you begin to think about active citizenship as a person making other people's problem their problem, then you begin to see it kind of everywhere, right? I mean, it's a little bit of what you're doing today. You're making other people's problem your problem. There's a notion that it is connective. There's a connective duty that we have to one another. And the way that we sort of like embrace other people's problems and take them on as though they are our own is a powerful thing to see. I've seen this at work from the micro to the macro. I've seen this at work, you know, from my dad taking a few days off work to drive newly arrived Syrian refugees from the airport to Kingston to their newly settled homes, who were sort of helping coordinate the housing response of new immigrants there, to, I think, like part of the response that we're seeing to Ukraine right now, right? A lot of folks who are saying there's not a lot I can do, but I can rent, you know, an Airbnb in Ukraine right now, and that's going to give money directly to the host family, or I can give some money for aid, or I can sort of organize an arts drive, which is something that I've seen a few friends do as well. It's the idea that that your life is not just your own, right? Like there's not, the confines of your life are not limited to the regular everyday problems that you encounter that are not necessarily, you know, related to the machinery of citizenship. Because I certainly don't think every problem is related to the machinery of citizenship. But when you step outside of the silo of your own life, that is when that begins to take shape, right? Like the idea that like I'm going to take on other people's problems and make them my own. I'm grateful for that. I'm grateful for that conception of us. I think like that is how we actually identify what a we is, because there are moments where we are individuals. There are far greater moments when we are more connected, and sort of focusing on the idea of what makes us connected is that idea of active citizenship, of saying, no, 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 you have a problem, but it is not your own. It is actually mine too. And I'm not going to rest until you figure out the solution to it. I'm grateful to do this work from a vantage point of being a journalist. I'm grateful to do this work from a vantage point of being a writer. Sometimes that means trying to write something that will articulate something that is in me, but I know it well enough to be global, and has, you know, a kind of necessity that other people just need to see their story told. That's a little bit of what I tried to do with the book that I have coming out called Son of Elsewhere, is just kind of articulating what it's like to arrive newly in this country and try to navigate the tensions of trying to make a new home in a new place that isn't quite your own just yet. It's a very much a book that is like individually telling my story, but in crafting it, what I was thinking about is like the ways that that story ends up opening up to other people's stories. I think there are myriad ways of waking up every day and choosing somebody else's problem to make your own. That is active citizenship. That is a place where we're not starting from a place of deficit, because a place of deficit is just like those basic needs, right? Like from every day, we know what those basic needs are, in terms of resources, in terms of access, in terms of information, in terms of training. And those fill a need and they solve an initial issue. But then from there, it's the idea of socializing and bringing to attention and bringing to account the ways that we are connected to one another, and we can't be severed from one another because we are tethered in these ways. I'm grateful, I really am, to get to do this work. I'm grateful to get to think about this every day. I hope that it fills you with pride and with joy that you get to think about this too. And I'm grateful for the work that you do. Thank you for having me. Thank you for taking the time to listen. I hope you have an amazing rest of your day. Thank you so much, folks. Have a good day.
Wow, there were just so many gems in there and so many pieces that align with this project. The importance of showing up, making a collective problem your problem. I love that piece about active citizenship is about making other people's problem your problem, and also not starting from a place of deficit. A lot of content to debrief and to work through over the course of this afternoon. And it's actually a perfect setup into the next section of our roundtable, which is the lightning talks. So one of the key goals through this project is to connect the sector with each other and to build space to learn from each other's work and initiatives. Today, we're super excited to feature 4 lightning talks of sector leaders, sector and community leaders that have led their communities to be more civically engaged in many, many ways. Over the next hour, you're going to hear from 4 inspirational people, and they will share their journeys and or their community journeys. Just a note, these are lightning talks, so they will move fast. While we don't have time for a dedicated Q&A section after each talk, we do have our chat box open. And if you have questions, we encourage you to put your questions in the chat box, and the panelists and speakers can respond via the chat box. So with that, I will pass it over to our first lightning talk speaker, Faisa Abdullahi from Next Level Impact Consulting. And she's going to tell us about her personal journey discovering community engagement through the various challenges that she faced as a newcomer. Just a note, this talk will be in French, if I'm not mistaken. So use that interpretation tab at the bottom of your Zoom screen to get the English translation. So I'll stop talking and I'll pass it over to Faisa.
Bonjour à tout le monde et merci bien sûr à leur... Oh, un instant, je vais Pardon, je me mets l'interprétation en off. Merci beaucoup pour l'invitation. Merci beaucoup de me donner un moment pour expliquer effectivement mon parcours. Je suis officiellement citoyenne du Canada depuis 82 jours. J'ai compté depuis le 18 décembre. Mais je me considère comme citoyenne active depuis 3265 jours. Ça m'amène en fait je vois quelques personnes applaudir. Merci Kojo. C'était un grand moment. Le 1er avril 2013, environ, où je me suis considérée comme citoyenne active parce que je suis arrivée au Canada en 2008. C'est ma deuxième immigration et c'est ma deuxième immigration que je n'avais d'ailleurs pas choisie. Donc, beaucoup des choses que Elamine a partagées sur se sentir chez soi, etc., ça a énormément résonné pour moi puisqu'en fait, j'ai grandi en Algérie, que j'ai dû quitter en 94, en pleine décennie noire. Donc, on avait une sorte de guerre civile là, au pays qui a été très, très difficile pour la population. Et j'ai donc dû quitter en 94. J'avais à peine 16 ans. Et je suis restée en France pour une quinzaine d'années. Et puis, bon, un nouveau choix de venir ici, qui n'était d'ailleurs pas mon choix. C'était une décision familiale. Mais par contre, j'ai enfin, pour la première fois de ma vie, choisi où je restais. Et ça, c'était en 2013, où c'était l'idée de passer de cette situation de résidente temporaire là, à une situation beaucoup plus pérenne sur laquelle je construis au Canada ma vie, la vie de mon fils, puisque je suis maman d'un garçon de 13 ans, et on va avancer à partir de là. Mon arrivée au Canada, elle a été particulière parce que ça a été vraiment une situation où je découvrais ce qui était derrière le rêve canadien. Je suis francophone, je suis même bilingue, je parle aussi anglais, mais ma première langue, c'est le français. Donc, le choix du Canada, une des décisions pour choisir le Canada, c'était bien sûr que c'était un pays officiellement bilingue. En arrivant ici, ça a été la première désillusion. Le pays n'est pas bilingue. Les francophones ont encore à se battre en dehors du Québec, au Québec, dans le pays en entier, pour un certain nombre de situations et pour un certain nombre d'accès auxquels je ne m'attendais pas, comme l'accès à la santé. J'ai aussi découvert d'autres choses finalement qui sont venues me chercher. C'est la question des difficultés de logement, de la discrimination et la reconnaissance des diplômes. Et ça va toucher tous les immigrants, tous les nouveaux arrivants. Je viens d'un background d'économiste, philosophe. J'ai étudié la philosophie, j'ai aussi travaillé beaucoup dans la vente, etc. Et je me disais, mon Dieu, voilà qu'on arrive dans un pays en se disant qu'on va reconstruire une nouvelle chose, qu'on va se stabiliser économiquement, se stabiliser financièrement. Mais toutes ces catastrophes, toutes ces barrières, toutes ces difficultés m'ont empêché personnellement, bien sûr, d'avancer aussi vite et aussi bien que je l'aurais rêvé, mais aussi tous les membres des communautés qui me touchent, donc les communautés francophones, les communautés de femmes, etc. Je n'ai pas voulu laisser ça comme ça. Je suis quelqu'un qui va vraiment chercher, je crois que j'ai gardé ça justement de mon père, qui était un combattant à sa façon. Donc, j'ai commencé à travailler dans le communautaire au niveau du développement économique et j'ai surtout commencé à devenir bénévole parce que c'était important pour moi d'aller porter des voix, d'aller amener des voix. Je voyais effectivement qu'un certain nombre de situations, les organismes voulaient y répondre, voulaient soutenir les nouveaux arrivants, mais je voyais aussi que les organismes seuls ne pourraient pas faire le travail. Les bénéficiaires des services, dès le début de leur arrivée au Canada, doivent pouvoir faire porter leur voix, partager leur voix, leurs difficultés, leurs désillusions, puisqu'en fait, ça a une conséquence directe sur notre capacité à être des citoyens qui amenons, soyons très pragmatiques, des taxes que l'on va payer et de la consommation que l'on va faire. C'est pour ça que finalement, le Canada ouvre aussi ses portes. Ce n'est pas juste, j'allais dire, de l'humanisme. Là, il y a aussi une démarche économique. Donc, je suis partie vraiment de cette démarche économique pour aller travailler en tant que citoyenne active. Et ma première activité, j'allais dire, qui a été vraiment majeure pour moi et que je voulais ramener vers vous au travers d'un exemple, c'est la présidence en fait d'un organisme qui s'appelle le MOFIF, Mouvement ontarien des femmes immigrantes francophones, qui m'a vraiment amené à collaborer d'ailleurs avec des organismes comme OCASI, mais surtout ce qu'on voulait faire avec cet organisme, c'était d'être la voix des femmes. des femmes immigrantes francophones et de les aider donc à amplifier leur situation et à les connecter en fait les unes avec les autres pour aller jusqu'à une forme de plaidoyer. C'était cette idée de plaidoyer. Quand je suis arrivée au Canada, j'ai bien vu que le danger, enfin j'espère que ça va rester comme ça, que le danger que j'aurais pu vivre dans mon pays d'origine à parler n'existait pas ici. Et je voulais absolument casser cette barrière et prendre la parole. Ça nous a amené à développer, dans le cadre des élections provinciales, donc les dernières élections provinciales, on en a bientôt quelques-unes, des sondages. C'était la première chose qu'on voulait absolument faire pour capturer ces situations. Donc, on a développé ces sondages, des sondages qui nous ont d'ailleurs fait ressortir que oui, le français était important pour les femmes immigrantes et réfugiées qu'on desservait, mais que le logement, les garderies étaient aussi des problématiques. Et ça, c'est des tables auxquelles nous ne sommes pas aujourd'hui. Les francophones ne sont pas invités à ces tables-là de revendication. Donc, c'était un travail qu'on voulait absolument engager. On a aussi eu des débats publics. Ça a résulté dans un livre blanc qui a demandé beaucoup d'efforts et de sueur. On n'était pas vraiment financé pour ce projet-là, un tout petit peu, mais pas suffisamment. Fast forward, comme on dit en anglais, 5 ans après, qu'est-ce qui s'est passé grâce à tout ce travail-là? On a une trentaine de femmes qui viennent d'être formées en leadership et mobilisation communautaire en programme d'engagement civique. C'est des nouvelles arrivantes qui ont vécu ces situations, qui vivent des difficultés de logement, de garderie, des difficultés de reconnaissance dans leur travail, des difficultés de santé mentale, etc., mais qui ont décidé, au-delà de leur situation de recevoir des services, prennent aussi ce rôle-là finalement d'ambassadrice, embrassent ces défis-là pour aller les porter avec et aux côtés des organismes qui les accompagnent et qui veulent répondre à leurs besoins. Différentes façons, elles vont faire ça de différentes façons et ça va être vraiment très important d'aller les soutenir et d'aller les regarder. En tout cas, moi, j'étais très émue de participer à toutes ces formations parce que ça a demandé du travail pour les amener là. Donc, cette idée, en fait, pour nous, d'aller chercher parmi les nouveaux arrivants, ceux qui n'ont pas encore leur citoyenneté, mais qui s'en viennent vers ce projet-là, ceux d'entre nous qui ont possiblement la capacité, la force mentale, la force physique aussi, d'aller s'engager au-delà de recevoir encore une fois des services, au-delà de travailler sur leur propre situation. Comment est-ce que vous allez les catalyser? Comment est-ce que vous allez les réunir, toutes ces personnes-là? Et je dis celles parmi les nouveaux arrivants qui ont cette capacité physique et cette force mentale. Parce que c'est épuisant. On arrive en tant que nouvel arrivant, réfugié ou au travers d'un des programmes, on a tout à refaire, on a tout à reconstruire, on a à retourner au collège, on a à retrouver un travail, on a à reconstruire un réseau, etc. Et on doit en plus porter sur nos épaules, pour certains d'entre nous, des revendications dont on ne s'attendait pas que ça allait être un besoin. On doit revendiquer pour tout, même à partir de parler notre langue. En conclusion, ce projet-là, ce qui me plaît beaucoup avec ce projet d'engagement civique et d'activité citoyenne, d'activisme citoyen, c'est que si on reprend la pyramide de Maslow, que certains d'entre vous connaissent sans doute, la question de l'appartenance, du belonging, c'est en haut de la pyramide. Et moi, ça m'a toujours gênée. Quels que soient les endroits où j'ai vécu, c'était quelque chose qui venait me chercher. J'ai trouvé une réponse auprès d'une autre pyramide qui a été développée cette fois-ci par les Premières Nations, qui m'accueillent sur cette terre et me laissent y vivre et j'espère pouvoir leur redonner tout le bonheur et la sécurité qu'ils m'apportent. Chez les Premières Nations, le sentiment d'appartenance n'est pas en haut de la pyramide, il est à la base de la pyramide. C'est parce qu'on va se sentir chez soi, on va se sentir en possibilité de construire sa vie, on va être en capacité aussi de faire reconnaître ses droits, d'agir en tant que citoyen. C'est là la base pour moi de l'intégration des nouveaux arrivants vers la citoyenneté active, qu'elle soit au travers des papiers ou même sans papier. Le vote arrive bientôt, ce n'est pas la seule façon pour moi d'agir. On a un nouveau cycle. Donc, pour les organismes et comme pour les leaders de communauté, voyons comment est-ce qu'on peut consulter nos bénéficiaires, recueillir leur vécu, documenter leur vécu, évaluer leur capacité d'agir à nos côtés et enfin de partager toutes ces informations et de partager tous leurs défis de tous les moyens possibles. Je le fais d'ailleurs aussi en tant que chroniqueuse autour de l'éducation financière. C'est absolument essentiel. La sécurité économique de nos nouveaux arrivants donnera aussi leur possibilité d'aller agir en tant que citoyen à part entière. Merci beaucoup pour le temps que vous m'avez donné.
Thank you so much, Faisa. That was really great, and I love the connection to what you've learned from Indigenous communities since you've come here as a newcomer. Next up is Kojo Damte. He is the Executive Director of the Hamilton Center for Civic Inclusion, and he's going to tell us about the You Matter project. Pass it over to Kojo.
Yes, good afternoon, everyone. Thanks to all the organizing partners for hosting this session and bringing us together. In these uncertain times, it's very, very important to bring us together. And as you can see, many folks and many organizations on this call and others across the country are doing exactly that. So I wanted to highlight the You Matter project that is being run by the Filipinas of Hamilton, Ontario. The Filipinas of Hamilton are a group of Filipino women here in Hamilton that have created a digital campaign to connect with other Filipina ex-Filipina and Filipino community members to share stories of struggle, resilience, triumph, and solidarity around the impacts of COVID. In Hamilton here, in 2020, our public health unit released a report that said 47% of people that were contracting COVID in our city here in Hamilton were from racialized communities, multi-generational homes, essential workers. And so the Filipinos of Hamilton are reaching out to their community members to talk about how COVID has impacted their lives and how community members have been supporting folks that contracted the disease, and how they can also talk about getting a COVID vaccine, talking about vaccine confidence, and all the issues that we are seeing come up today around public health protections around this disease. So they've been doing that work. They continue to do that work. I would be remiss to talk about International Women's Day and the important role that women play in active citizenship. So I wanted to highlight their work and to also highlight the work that's being done by Refuge Newcomer Health Center, who has been running vaccination clinics here in Hamilton since April 2021. And since then, they've been able to vaccinate over 6,000 residents of Hamilton. I'll repeat that again, over 6,000 residents of Hamilton. And Refuge has been working with Compass Health, Hamilton Urban Core, Centre de Santé, the Disability Justice Network of Ontario, the Hamilton Public Library, this is Short Canada, the City of Hamilton, and Councillor Narinda Nan from Ward 3. And I list all those organizations to underscore how we talk about active citizenship. And I think that has been the theme for today, just talking about active citizenship involves different forms. And I think Elamine summed it up properly. That is when other people's problems become our problems. And so we have to continue with that collective action of supporting community members, regardless of where they are, where they're from. And that is the pathway to get us to active citizenship and also enhancing and strengthening our democracy. And so I leave you with those words, and I look forward to hearing from others and learning from everyone that will be in the breakout groups. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kojo. As always, you've also given us so much to think about and talk about. For those of you who were here last year, we had Kojo speak at our launch event. And yeah, it's great to see that you're still working on all of these issues. Next up, we are going to hear from Samia Hassan from the Council of Agencies Serving South Asians, also known as CASA. And Samia is going to tell us about COVID outreach and vaccine engagement in South Asian communities. Pass it over to Samia.
Thank you so much, Saharan. I wanted to thank the North York Community House, OCASI, and Ryerson's Democratic Exchange Program for inviting me to speak today. I join you today from the traditional unceded Indigenous territories of the Huron-Wendat, the Haudenosaunee, and most recently the territory of the Mississaugas of the Credit. Today, I see Takaranto is the traditional Mohawk name of this area called Toronto, which means trees in the water, and its surrounding areas are still home to Indigenous people. As an immigrant to these lands with my own histories of colonialism, and I know that there's a lot of folks in the audience that work with immigrants and are immigrants, I commit to ongoing learning of truth and taking action in solidarity with Indigenous communities on the path to reconciliation. So I'm going to spend the 10 minutes that I have today to share a brief story of active citizenship in the work that we do. The Council of Agencies Serving South Asians is a social justice umbrella organization. We serve South Asian communities in the province of Ontario. And normally for these kind of events, I would share stories about our civic engagement campaigns where we engage our communities in election processes or in building their capacity to participate in decision-making processes. But today I'm going to share a different story and I want to encourage thinking differently about what active citizenship is. And I know the speakers before me have done the same thing. And we're thinking about really critically what active citizenship is to us. So as you may or may not be aware, we are under a global pandemic and we have been so over the last 2 years. And earlier on in the pandemic, back in 2020, the provincial government directed public health units after significant pressure to start collecting race-based disaggregated data. And I know my colleague Kojo mentioned about the cases in Hamilton, and we saw similar cases here in the Greater Toronto area. So as the results began to come out in the summer of 2020, we started to look at patterns that we as advocates had already suspected were happening on the ground. We saw here in GTA a huge disproportionate impact of COVID on racialized communities, as mentioned. Especially in late 2020, we saw rates among South Asian communities in Ontario begin to soar. And this was particularly the case for the hotspots that were labeled, such as in Peel, the region of Peel, in Toronto, and in York region. And what followed that, I'm not sure if you were paying attention to the news at that time, but this is something that I have a hard time forgetting, is something that was very concerning. Instead of having conversations and creating solutions and looking at systemic causes for why this was happening, we started to receive bad press. Our community started to receive bad press. There was a lot of victim shaming. There was a lot of victim blaming that began around that time. And advocates and people in the community, this was not okay for us. And so this led to massive grassroots organizing and community-led public awareness campaigns. The community members, leaders, agencies, and advocates were not ready to accept these labels being attributed to them. Collectively, the community began to raise awareness about the root causes and systemic causes that had a direct relationship to the high infection rates in our communities, such as the rates of precarious employment in our communities, inadequate housing, hidden homelessness, inadequate access to local health care that is culturally tailored, among other factors. National groups that garnered millions of views and thousands of followers on social media formed. An incredible example of such a group is the South Asian COVID-19 Task Force. and they were formed to provide education to communities about health and safety, about precautions, about vaccine safety. They focus their content in languages that communities can understand and through mediums they have access to, such as ethnic media, radio, TV, through word of mouth, through WhatsApp, just sharing of information in accessible ways. CASA was also involved in this awareness campaign, and we ramped up our own public awareness campaign. We created content, we translated content, we spread it in our networks, we spread it through social media. We started a helpline specifically for South Asian communities and provided information to people that had language barriers and technology barriers. Many of them included immigrants, included newcomers, and included refugees. We had the helpline running during the time when we had the Amazon warehouses in Peel region shut down, and we received calls from thousands of individuals that were looking for information in the languages that they could understand. Needless to say, our staff were working double time to meet these requirements those days. We utilized the principles that we learned from our past civic engagement campaigns. We do a lot of civic engagement work in our communities as well. And we needed to ensure that we were being inclusive. We were eliminating barriers to information and barriers to access in this public awareness. We have seen today infection rates dropping quite rapidly in South Asian communities in cities such as Toronto. CASA and grassroots groups such as the South Asian COVID Task Force, the Canadian Muslim Task Force, the Black Scientist Task Force on Vaccine Equity have all been approached by many public health units to provide advice on public awareness education and on the pandemic and on vaccinations. Currently, CASA is working with a collaborative of over 10 South Asian organizations and grassroots groups. We are called the South Asian Vaccine Engagement Collaborative, and we do a lot of public education on vaccination. And we do it in ways that's creative. We do it in ways that is accessible, and it's easy for people to understand. Information is being provided to the communities, and we keep in mind that people have language barriers, people have intersectional identities, they have intersectional barriers in relation to those identities. And we ensure that we are building cultural sensitivity and we're taking an anti-racist and anti-oppressive approach to the information that we provide. This way, communities that we serve were able to make informed decisions about their behavior in the pandemic and vaccine uptake. In terms of advocacy for systemic issues, that's ongoing. Unfortunately, things on systemic issues move at a much slower pace than we'd like, but we are continuing to raise the voices of marginalized communities in the communities that we serve and raise awareness about issues that make them more vulnerable to health inequities, such as being contracted by the COVID-19 virus. Thank you, that's all for me.
Samia, thank you so much. There's so many lessons there for, like, I know your initiative was for one community, but you've shared so many lessons that can be applied to a lot of other communities and organizations. So thank you for sharing those. For the lightning talk speakers, by the way, if there's any links that you would like to share related to the initiatives that you've spoken about, feel free to pop those in the chat. Samia, your speech reminded me of some really great journalistic reporting on this topic, and I'll pop that into the chat as well. Moving on, our last but not least lightning talk is from Lucia Morales from Ottawa at the City for All Women's Initiative, COWI. And Lucia will be speaking to us about the Making Voices Count campaign in Ottawa. So Lucia, over.
Okay, so hi, my name is Lucia Morales. I am joining you from the unceded, unsurrendered territories of the Algonquin Anishinaabe in Toronto. My talk is a little different. I am originally from Guatemala, so I will pepper that in a little bit, but I will talk to you about the Making Voices Count project. And like it was said before, you might hear my cat. So the City for All Women initiative is a unique collaboration of women from diverse communities, organizations, and academia working together with municipal decision makers to create a more inclusive city and promote gender equity, and we're based in Ottawa. And the Making Voices Count project brings together grassroots community leaders and local organizations to work with decision makers and advocate for progressive systemic change in Ottawa. It's driven by residents and it's supported by Cowie in partnership with the Coalition of Community Health and Resource Centers. So Making Voices Count, or MVC for short, is a program that supports low-income folks in Ottawa that are underserved and underrepresented in politics. This includes newcomers, and we support them to make their voices heard in municipal decision-making. Past wins of the program include the creation of the EquiPass, which is a pass with reduced fares for low-income folks, and $15 million dedicated to affordable housing in annual municipal budgets since 2018, amounting to $60 million since 2018. In 2019, MVC won the United Way Community Builder Award, and it started as an action research project called Making Votes Count to increase voter turnout in low-income neighborhoods across Ottawa in 2014. We continue to focus on voter turnout and education during elections for all levels of government, and offer elections training before elections. So it's been and it's going to be an interesting year with 3 elections in 12 months. MVC has a civic engagement table that meets monthly to learn, to share information, to plan for action. It brings together residents and community agencies to work on collective action. We're focused on poverty reduction, affordable housing, equitable transportation, food security, and childcare, just to name a few issues. We also address issues that arise for provincial and federal levels of government when they have an impact on these key issues. And guided by residents, supported by staff, we develop key messages and one-page background documents on priority issues around key times like municipal budget, elections, when there's important discussions around zoning. For example, Ottawa just approved their new official plan, so we had lots to add to that. After elections training, residents are supported to encourage voting with their neighbors. Between election cycles, we advocate for socially just policies, primarily at the municipal level of government. Every year, we offer training on how to make your voice heard around the city budget, how to present a delegation at City Hall, and how to engage city councilors. Our audience, so our focus for engagement is really low-income, underserved residents, and we don't collect demographic information pertaining to citizenship status. So I don't have any data to share on how many newcomers are participating in our programming. However, when we are designing and delivering workshops and training, everyone's welcome. We emphasize the importance of, as our program says it, it's important to make your voice count and your voice heard at all levels of government, regardless of immigration status. We use a popular education approach to our programming, which emphasizes that learning begins with the sharing of participants' lived experiences, personal, community, cultural histories, their individual and collective knowledge. So key in our workshops is that participants see the connection of the new knowledge they're learning with their own lived experience. So for folks that come from countries like mine, like Guatemala, that have not the most trustworthy election process or system, it's good to know where people are coming from in the sense of their relationship with voting or democracy or lack thereof, and approach our training that's very 101 to make connections with their experiences. Our training is approachable and accessible. We use plain language, and it's always in French and English. And around elections, when there's more than a month to prepare materials, we get materials translated into other languages like Arabic, Somali, and Spanish. We connect and recruit participants for trainings largely through community developers at the community health and resource centers. through community partners, and at times through social media. We see community developers as having an ear to the ground in the community, as they're already out building relationships with residents. Like I said, I'm originally from Guatemala, and after 12 years, I'm not yet a citizen. And I very much use my own experience during training to highlight the importance of being involved, and that immigration status does not determine advocacy efforts or involvement in local or nationwide issues. And lastly, I wanted to share some of the challenges with our programming. Obviously, the pandemic has affected attendance. We've noticed that participants have either stopped coming, but we've also seen folks that hadn't been able to join in a few months to start coming, and folks that self-identified as newcomers have come and returned to programming looking to build a sense of community, to get involved in local issues and use it as a sort of connection. But our greatest challenge yet continues to be a challenge is funding. We are largely funded through United Way, through in-kind donations from the coalition and community partners. And because at Cowie our focus is promoting gender equity, we have a grant through Wage, but grants are competitive and applying for grants doesn't secure the funding, which is stressful because our programming is truly so wonderful. So I'd say that's our biggest challenge, but I'll leave it there. Thank you for having me.
Lucia, thank you so much for sharing all of that. A few things that pop out. I really, really love that point about popular education approach. And you said learning begins with sharing lived experiences and also personal and collective knowledge. And I think that is so powerful, especially with a project like this, where you're dealing with people that have such various diverse backgrounds and such rich life experiences, which are often seen as deficits instead of assets. And through this project, we're really, really trying to take that asset-based approach and leverage that lived experience and personal and collective knowledge. And today I learned from you that there's a term for that, and it's called popular education approach. So we are now moving on to be connecting with each other part of the event, and we're super excited for you all to connect with each other. I'm personally really excited to meet many of you. Don't get these opportunities very often in this virtual world. The session is going to be facilitated by the team at Openly and led by Sabina Ansari and Lisa Villeneuve. Openly, if you haven't heard of them, is a conscious Canadian company that is grounded locally and connecting globally. They have tons of experience working with a wide range of immigrant serving organizations across the nonprofit and charitable sector. And if you go on their website, it says that they are a perfect blend of hustle and heart. And I can confirm that's true. I've known Lisa and various members of the team for the past several years, and that is a perfect representation of who they are as people, but also as a team. So we went to the Openly team when we were designing this event with a task, which was, how do we find a way to connect everyone in a virtual environment on conversations related to leveraging opportunities for civic engagement in the sector? So often, and I'm sure many of you feel this way, so often we speak about challenges and we start from a deficit approach. And some of our speakers talked about this as well over the past couple hours. We wanted to reverse that, and we want to reverse that through this project. One of the Journeys to Active Citizenship Project's core guiding values is taking an asset-based approach. So over the past few weeks, we've worked closely with Openly to design a shared collective reflection and learning session where we create that space to reflect, connect with each other, and do some sense making of the last few hours by taking an asset-based approach. So that's all I'll say. The Openly team will set us up for the next piece. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Sabina Ansari from the Openly team, who's going to lead us through the next session.
Thank you, Seher, and hello, everyone. It's a real pleasure and a real honor to be here. This issue is very close to my heart, and I'm just going to take a few minutes to tell you about myself and why this topic is important to me. My father was born in British India, and when he was 17, his family had to migrate to the newly created state of Pakistan as refugees because they were under threat in India at the time. And they rebuilt themselves completely in that state, which is where I was born. And fast forward to when I was 17, I left home for college in the United States. And I thought I'd go back to Pakistan, but once again, there was a security situation and my family was under threat and we immigrated to the US. That's where I spent all of my adult life. And 5 years ago, I came to Canada. So I have a lived experience of really, first of all, feeling my father's journey and the journey of his family and the struggles that they faced, forming themselves as citizens in a completely new country. And then as a not yet adult in the United States, being an immigrant, and then having to kind of redo everything once I got to Canada. So that's a little bit about me. I'll also say that professionally, I've been involved in social justice and human rights causes, and I have worked with violence in immigrant communities and active citizenship in the US, as well as working with newcomers in East Scarborough who face multiple barriers to active citizenship. That's just a little bit about me and why I'm really moved to be here today. I'll turn it over to my colleague Faisa, who's co-leading with us. You already met her earlier, but I'll just turn it over to her to say a few words before we move in.
Yes, thank you, Sabina, and hi again, everyone. So I'll be joining this amazing theme as I'll be facilitating the Francophone breakout room. Outside of being a volunteer and an active citizen, I am a consultant and evaluator around economic development and financial literacy. So looking forward to hear everybody in the breakout room, and thank you, Lisa and Sabina, for the opportunity to prepare this breakout rooms and the brainstorming together. It was a blessing.
Thank you, Faisa. Hi, everybody. I'm Lisa Villeneuve. I'm one of the co-founders of Openly. It's a real pleasure to be here with all of you today. And I just want to acknowledge Faisa's amazing contribution to helping us get ready for the conversation today and really thinking through with Sabina and me, how we can create a space where you can all connect, get to meet one another. We heard that you're eager to learn from one another, to share, to bring back tools and ideas into your work. I am a person who was born in Canada, so I don't have an immigration story, but I would say that I have a real passion for active citizenship and work with organizations across the nonprofit charitable sector that connect with newcomer communities and that are led by newcomers. So I'm really honored to be a part of the conversation today, and we won't take too much more time. I'll just turn it back to Sabina, who can get us started with the conversation.
Thank you, Lisa. So as we get ready to break out into different groups and have a more intimate conversation in this large group, take a moment to reflect on these three questions. What does active citizenship mean to you? How is this reflected in your work today? And what are the greatest opportunities that you see to strengthen active citizenship and belonging in your community? As you reflect on these questions, we're going to work on breaking you out into little groups of about 7. At first, the first thing we'd love for you to do is take a moment to introduce each other, talk to each other, and then we're going to be sharing perspectives on Jamboards just to make sure we capture everybody's ideas. If you're new to Jamboards, in a moment, Lisa will give you an overview, but it's fairly simple to use, and we're here for you should you face any difficulties. I'd ask each group to please nominate one person to populate the Jamboards with everybody's ideas. We have about 45 minutes for this activity. So once you've done introductions, let's say plan on about 12 to 15 minutes per question. The questions will be written on the Jamboard, so they'll be there for you to reflect on. And we'll just send reminders in the chat to kind of move you along when the time is approaching. We don't want to interrupt the flow, so we won't be like popping in to say anything. So with that, I will just turn it over. Oh, sorry, I just wanted to say that once we're done with the breakout rooms, we'll have a chance to see everybody's Jamboards, which we call a gallery walk. So imagine that if we were in a room together, there'd be lots of activity as we broke out into these rooms, and then everything would be up on the wall. So what we're trying to do is sort of virtually recreate some of that and be able to just see that visual representation of everyone's ideas. And then we can all reconvene as a group and have a conversation.
Hi, I wanted to share a bit of something that my group emphasized, which was regularizing status for all. I think when we're talking about active citizenship, it's really hard to ask people to be active in their communities. Many of them are, but it's really hard for us to ask that of them if they still have temporary status in the country, and Canada is still putting barriers for them to access a permanent status. I think when we're talking about fulfilling the needs first, having that reassurance is a very strong basis for continued involvement. And it really values it's a way to value the contributions that they're already making to the country and to honor that participation. So I would emphasize that advocacy as an essential element.
Merci, Emilio. Thank you very much, Emilio, for what you just shared. CPG, can you tell us a bit about your organization and how you can maybe take what you heard and into your organization tomorrow?
Yes, definitely. I think, well, we're Citizens for Public Justice. We're an Ottawa-based political advocacy organization. I think my common response to that, many of the organizations here are doing amazing work on the ground, and what we do is basically support that through political advocacy with the federal government and at the provincial level as well. So I think I'm thrilled to be part of these conversations because I really gather different insights that we can then incorporate into our advocacy. Again, regularizing status is one of the main things that we want to support, and it's just this awareness that is, if we're asking for involvement, we also must give rights to the people that we are calling to participate. So I guess I'll take that to my work and continue advocating for these things.
Wonderful. Thank you, Emilio. This work is really at the heart of your everyday involvement and commitment within the society. Anyone in this group that is actually feel or think that actually its organization is very far from addressing this topic, and from what has been said, what has been shared, now have an idea to bring back this desafio, this challenge that we have in their work. So something new maybe that you will implement, because we're talking about settlement agencies often in everyday work dealing with issues to access housing, for example. That's something that came up in our group. When you have issues to access basic needs coming into the country, how do you create this want or this dynamic? Is it a raised hand?
Yeah, it is a raised hand.
I wasn't sure because I called you out.
Je m'excuse.
Bien sûr.
Je vais parler en anglais. I'll speak in English for the most part for folks, just so there's not a lot of switching translation. I'll add that one thing that I'm pushing a lot as a visual artist and as well in various participatory or collaborative art project contexts is the payment of honorariums, especially for, the sharing of resources, especially in contexts where you're working with where class is a barrier, where folks don't have a lot of leisure time because they're working too much, right? So I make that distinction because I don't want to seem accusatory as if it applies somehow to this event. This event is different. Most of us are working for organizations where we do have a salary and so on, but say if I'm creating a participatory project or a collaborative project, it takes time for even to run a workshop. So of course you pay the artist to run a workshop, but maybe you consider sharing the resources and in fact paying the participants to even be there as a way to justify, right, their kind of economic inclusion, right? As a way to say that, yes, there are absolutely barriers related to race, to gender, to sexual orientation, and so on, but there are class barriers that make it impossible for some folks to even justify taking the time to participate in a colloquium, right? So, or a symposium. So that's something that I'm pushing, and of course, we want more funding, and then more funding needs to happen in order to make that happen. But it's something that I push for a lot and have been pushing for as a way to try and push through those class-based barriers. That's what I'll offer.
Merci pour ce point, Akil. Il y a un coût effectivement à la participation, ce qui est très intéressant de voir aussi en termes de citoyenneté quand on l'a définit en tant que citoyenneté là, au niveau du papier, d'accès au passeport, etc. C'est que finalement, c'est les communautés les plus vulnérables au niveau économique, au sein desquelles on voit de moins en moins, on voit la part en fait de ces groupes vulnérables économiquement baisser en termes d'acquisition en fait à la citoyenneté. C'est aussi les groupes qui auront le plus besoin de voter, de porter leur voix. Quelqu'un d'autre qui voudrait réagir ou qui voudrait apporter, on a encore quelques minutes en fait dans ces échanges, qui voudrait partager un point d'action, un point de réflexion, une expérience aussi, une bonne pratique peut-être au sein de vos organismes. C'est quelque chose que vous avez pu capturer effectivement dans les Jamboards, mais la parole est à vous, le micro est à vous si vous le souhaitez. Vous pouvez aussi partager dans la partie chat, dans la partie clavardage, si c'était plus facile en fait.
Faisa, I'm wondering if maybe while people are thinking about it, if I might just ask, one of the things I noticed when I was looking at the Jamboards was there seemed to be a couple of themes that stood out, and I thought one was about belonging, which I thought would be interesting for us to hear more about how you're thinking about that. And connected with that, I thought was, how important it is to create safe and safe conditions and places where people feel, psychologically safe and physically safe to be able to participate. And the third, which I wondered if it was connected, was the importance of storytelling. And I wondered if someone might be able to share a little bit with us around what was talked about around these things that might help us to understand those things a little bit better.
Storytelling.
I'm not going to share something in particular, but I want to call out someone too, if you don't mind. Shulan, you had amazing ideas about storytelling when in our group 5. Sorry to call you out, but you were fantastic.
I'll be happy to share, but I think Masa has a lot to say as well. So I said a lot. So for the story sharing, Rania, what can you give me a couple?
Remember how you talked about those examples of actually taking people on a journey and listening to their story? The idea of,
Okay. So
have them share their story so that they open up and be more open to change, right?
Okay. So I was talking about some opportunities I am thinking for this year, because the weather is going to be nice. People have been locked in the house for 2 years. So maybe, in the past 2 years, because pandemic brought up this anti-Asian hate again. So because my agency based in the GTA and the Chinatown. So I am thinking I can organize my committee members to go on a tour, to go to the historical sites, to learn the different community history in the Chinatown area. So when we go on the tour to listen to the Jewish history, the Black history in this area, and I also would like our members to talk about their personal stories in relation to that specific place. So in that way, we will create opportunity for the stories have some interaction. Although not in person, like two people speaking stories, but to bring our Chinese community members to learn more about other communities' history. That's one idea I was talking about. And also when we organize some events, we want to have someone to be the panelist. We also want to reserve the room for the participant to actually open their mouths and open their mind to converse, to have a real dialogue. So they will put in their own stories to echo the story they heard from whatever our panelists will put on.
Ouais.
Thank you so much for sharing that. And I know for myself, just listening to the stories today really helped to bring it to life for me. So yeah, I think that's a really helpful reminder.
Absolument.
Any other
Merci.
insights? Yeah, sorry, Faisa.
Non, of course. J'allais dire merci, Shulan. Ce que vous venez de partager, c'est vraiment très fort, puisque avec la pandémie, c'est vrai, les gens se sont séparés, non seulement physiquement, mais se sont aussi rétractés. Donc, on veut aller à la rencontre des autres. La citoyenneté active, c'est justement cette vie en communauté. Donc, merci pour la force de ce que vous venez de partager. Et je n'habite pas très loin de Chinatown. Je serais ravie de pouvoir participer moi aussi à ce type d'activité. On arrive à 4 heures, Lisa. Est-ce qu'on redonne la parole à Seher et Paul? Je sais que nous, on va avoir beaucoup de travail là à 3 pour aller retravailler toutes ces notes et les partager avec le groupe.
I was just suggesting, Faisa, that perhaps as a way for us to wrap up, in addition to people continuing to share, is if you could share with us in the chat. It is really helpful for us for the summary that we're going to create. One insight, takeaway, or action item that you're going to take back from this conversation into your work and community. We welcome you to continue sharing. We have a few more minutes before we wrap up.
Wonderful. Thank you for the few additional minutes. That's appreciated.
Yeah. So what's one thing that you're going to take away? Please let us know in the chat, or feel free to open your mic.
Pour rappel, ce sera un projet sur 5 ans. Donc là, on est sur la 2e année. On est en train Vous êtes en train, chacun d'entre vous, de planter des graines individuellement au sein de vos organismes, collectivement, pour créer une force. Ah.
Oh, Akil. Apologies, we didn't see your hand.
No, it's okay, c'est correct. Merci, Abrar et Faisa. I wasn't answering the specific question, but continuing a through line that Shulan shared, which is that I, at every opportunity as a visual artist, I also work with the International Center of Art for Social Change, or ICAS. And what we promote is the integration of artists and art and storytelling, ultimately, into every aspect of social change work. So we see a need in this landscape of social change organizations, included in that, of course, immigration, migration, settlement, refugees, supporting these folks, to use art and storytelling, not only in the context of, say, a workshop, right, to give paints and brushes as an example, but as well to integrate storytelling, as Shulan has mentioned, into every aspect, and that includes addressing issues of belonging, addressing issues of language, learning language, addressing basically, top to bottom, integrating art and storytelling into these aspects. And it's something that we're trying to push a lot, the International Center of Art for Social Change, with quite a high degree of success, right? We have partners and collaborators who join us, who enlist artists to help with different work. and it's say a budding or growing ecosystem of arts organizations and social change organizations that work together in kind of this cross-pollination, to use a buzzword, you may excuse, right? Some cross-pollination. So I'll throw that in people's minds as well, because our work is all about people. And we communicate and we feel affected, we feel connected when we feel emotionally connected. And we can do that with storytelling and with art.
Absolutely. Beyond au-delà des chiffres, au-delà des groupes stéréotypés, c'est effectivement des personnes, et des personnes qui viennent construire une nouvelle vie, qui ont des droits et des responsabilités. L'art a un grand impact dans tout ce travail-là. Merci Akil pour la participation très active, hein, qui a été aussi soulignée dans le chat par Seher. On voit John qui nous rappelle en fait l'importance de la confiance aussi entre les organisations pour créer des espaces sécuritaires, pour que les personnes, les bénéficiaires puissent parler de politique, même si on ne l'appelle pas politique, c'est quand même de la politique. Merci. Merci John. On demandait des final thoughts. Anglo Panic Abrar. Okay, yes, it's 4:05. This is why maybe. So no panic. We'll jump from one language to the other. Here we go. Sarah saying, I will reflect on belonging as foundational rather than an outcome. Is this the case? If so, does it change our actions? I'll share I'll look for it really quickly, a link for a description of this Maslow pyramid, not viewed from a Western perspective, but from a First Nation perspective. That's true. We were talking about newcomers here, but we come on a land with nations that are often forgotten also from this topic of active citizenship. So how do we reconnect? I'm very glad, Sarah, that you keep this idea of belonging as foundational rather than an outcome. I'll take a minute to look for it. Any final thoughts?
Thanks, Stefan.
Yeah, hands up.
Hand up.
Where are you, Stéphane? Stéphane?
Oui, en fait, je m'étais juste fait une réflexion tout à l'heure par rapport à, je crois que c'est toi, Faisa, qui avait parlé au titre de la citoyenneté active du logement. Parce que, en fait, moi, j'estime qu'en tant que professionnel aussi de l'accueil de personnes qui arrivent au Canada en situation de faiblesse, moi, œuvrant au sein du centre communautaire francophone, il faut qu'on soit pragmatique. On peut demander effectivement et attendre de ces nouvelles personnes qu'elles s'intègrent, qu'elles fassent montre d'action citoyenne, mais elles ont aussi la nécessité, tu parlais aussi de la pyramide de Maslow, elles ont la nécessité aussi de combler des besoins qui sont primaires, qui sont primordiaux, que ce soit l'hébergement, que ce soit leur sécurité alimentaire, leur sécurité émotive. Et il va sans dire que demander de prime abord à ces populations-là, peut-être de donner déjà avant de sécuriser tout cela, c'est compliqué. Donc, je pense qu'il faut qu'on soit très, très pragmatique. On a aussi cette nécessité, nous qui sommes déjà sur place, à les aider à aller vers cette sécurité qui va pouvoir ensuite leur donner l'énergie d'aller chercher une implication plus active dans la société canadienne.
Merci beaucoup, Stéphane. Excellent final words. So Stéphane was stressing out one point that we had in the group. Virginie also Courbière from Collège Boréal mentioned it. It's possibly not a pyramid here, but a vicious circle. People coming in need their basic needs fulfilled before they give, but they also need to feel active, I guess, to request or to, how should I say that? Exiger. Someone can help me? Exiger, demand. Thank you very much. Seher, thank you for giving us the opportunity, Sabina, Lisa, and me, to work together and to facilitate this breaking rooms and discussion. And the mic is yours.
Thank you so much, Lisa, Faisa, Sabina. That was amazing. Anglo panic is my new favorite word or term. That was incredible. Our breakout room had people from Windsor, London, Ottawa, Toronto, and we've already been connected on an email thread. So I hope all of you made the most of this opportunity to connect with each other. And if not, you can still private message people that you met and ask for their email and stay connected. Next, I'm going to pass it over to my colleague, Paul Bishop at OCASI.
Thank you all so much for being here, and I just thoroughly enjoyed the lively discussion that I was in the Francophone group, and it sounds like equally lively discussions that went on in the others, so I just thank you all for your contributions.
So that brings us to the end of the event. Thank you so much to all of you that joined. I know we live in a world of intense Zoom fatigue and also competition for our time and attention. So thank you so much for spending the afternoon with us. In terms of next steps, please stay connected with us. Maybe the project team, we can put our emails into the chat, and if anyone wants to reach out, we can make ourselves available. I just want to reiterate that this project is our project as a sector. It's not just the 3 organizations that are here speaking. The goal for this project is collective. It's to empower immigrants and refugees to have a more active voice in their community. And we can only do that by strengthening organizational and community capacity to promote civic engagement through all of you. So you are absolutely critical to this work, and this project is yours as much as it is ours. So please stay connected to us. We have a newsletter at journeys to active citizenship. Sorry about that. We have a website, journeys to active citizenship.ca, that we really love and is also new, so feel free to check it out. You can join our newsletter over there. We also have our SettleNet community of practice for active citizenship, which is a online community of practice that you can join. And lastly, we're on Twitter at Journeys to AC, where we've also been posting about the project, and you'll see some posts about this roundtable in the coming days as well. Before we officially close, I want to give a huge thank you to everybody who made this roundtable event happen. The project team, John Beebe at Ryerson, Rustam, Tara and Mariam at North York Community House, Marta and Paul at OCASI. A special thanks to Paul at OCASI for playing a critical role in organizing much of the behind the scenes work that goes into putting an event like this together. The other day, we actually questioned if doing an online event is more work than doing it in person. And it's not clear, actually. There's a lot of small details and a lot of troubleshooting, and things that you don't expect could go wrong can go wrong. So thank you to Paul for leading us to make sure that this event runs smoothly. Thank you to Elga and Kimia on our evaluation team, who have supported the design and evaluation of this event, as well as Cuddy Duncan, Shelley Zuckerman, and Debbie Douglas, who support this project in various different ways. Thank you to Lisa, Sabina, Faisa again, and the Openly team for your help in co-designing the breakout room sessions and sense-making session with us. Thank you to the speakers. I don't think they're here anymore, but thank you to the speakers who took the time to share their perspectives and their learnings with us, to the interpreters for helping to make this event accessible in multiple languages. And last but not least, thank you to all of you for taking an afternoon away from your busy schedules, for sitting through 3 hours of Zoom and engaging so fully with all of us. So that's all from us.